All right, we're back for our study of Luke in the fall, which means it's time for another fill-in video. And it is the fall. As you can see, I'm wearing my jacket today. So we are going to make the connection between what we read and studied this weekend at church and what we're going to be studying next week. And for us this week, that means Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 17. So not a whole lot to cover, and it's not particularly confusing, so this should be a fairly short one, which is nice, but it'll get us ready for this coming Sunday. So if you want to get to Luke chapter 18, if you want to read along, and as usual, I'm reading from New King James, but you can use whatever version you would prefer. So here we go, Luke chapter 18, verse 9. And before I actually start reading, we should make sure we know, some of you may not have joined us on Sunday, but Jesus has talked about the coming of the kingdom, being prepared for that it is going to be unmistakable, that it is going to be sudden, and unfortunately, it's going to be divisive. And so you'll know it when it happens, and we want to make sure that we're prepared. If you have any questions about that, I strongly encourage you to watch the message from this weekend. But he's going to begin as we go further into Luke chapter 18. Jesus is going to be talking about more how to be prepared for this kingdom, how the kingdom works, what success looks like in the kingdom, how we should be thinking about that now, all of that as we continue. We started in the message with Luke chapter 18, the parable of the persistent widow, and Jesus talking about how important it is for us to be praying for the kingdom, the arrival of Jesus in the kingdom. That's what we talked about this weekend. Which brings us to Luke 18, verse 9. Also, he spoke this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. So these are people who think that they are at the top of the ladder religiously. He tells this parable. Verse 10. 2 men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. And the tax collector, standing afar off, would not so much as raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled. He who humbles himself will be exalted. Now, this is really important. It's important for us to understand as Christians that the key to success in the kingdom, being the kind of people who will be ready for Christ's kingdom and will be rewarded in his kingdom, does not come through pride and arrogance. It comes through humility. And so the difference between, and this is really clear, so I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about it, but the difference between the tax collector is that he recognized his need for God versus the Pharisee who trusted in his own self-effort and was arrogant and prideful. And Jesus said, this is not the way that it works. And this is an important, vitally important understanding for us as believers as we prepare for the kingdom that Jesus is bringing, as we learn to live as citizens of that kingdom now, is that humility is the key to success. Not pride, not arrogance, not self-reliance. Jesus drives that point home even further in the next thing that happens in verse 15. Then they also brought infants to him, or little children, that he might touch them. But when the disciples saw it, they rebuked them. But Jesus called them to him and said, let me pause. Why might they have rebuked him? And said, you shouldn't have these children coming to you. Because the children aren't important enough. The children in their society had no power, had no standing, no status. Those aren't the people that Jesus should have been spending his time with, according to the disciples. And so Jesus rebukes them. He called to them and he said, middle of 16, let the little children come to me and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of God. Assuredly, I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will by no means enter it. And so what is Jesus saying? He's saying, when he talks about entering the kingdom, we're going to talk more about this on Sunday, so join us on Sunday for this. What does it mean to enter the kingdom? And spoiler alert, I don't believe that's about salvation, about becoming a child of God. Jesus uses other terms to talk about that. This is about those who are children of God, entering into the kingdom, enjoying it, having responsibility, participating in it. And Jesus says that these children, if you don't enter like a child with this humility, then you're going to misunderstand what the kingdom is. The kingdom belongs to such as these. Those who are humble, those who are meek, right? You can see that throughout Jesus' ministry. And then the very next thing that's going to happen, and this is what we're going to talk about on Sunday, is we're going to get the contrast of someone who's on the complete other end of the spectrum. Not a little child coming to Jesus, but a rich ruler coming to Jesus. And we're going to talk about that this weekend. All right, so that's it. See you on Sunday.